Hello and welcome to the Niche Nation podcast, where it is uncut, real, raw depth of what we are here to journey in our stories, our medicine, and our purpose on this path. Today, I'm excited to introduce to you Becca and bring in a journey of what self care really means. So, welcome, Becca.
Thank you. I am excited for our conversation today.
So, tell me a little bit about what has just inspired you to take the reins and really bring in that difference about self-care and your kind of twist and sprinkles onto the word that we seem sometimes just is generic, or sometimes we just slough it off or think we are doing it, but then we realize that we're not.
Well, what I've really come to look at is self care. It's important because it's one of those things that helps us maintain in a physical and a mental health. It helps us in reducing our stress, it can help our mood improve. It can help in our overall resilience. But what
Mhm.
I've really found is important is you've got to find what your importance of self care is, of what does self care look like? Because it's one of those things that it gets a negative rap of self-care is you're going and getting massages, which if that's your self-care, that's fine, but that doesn't have to be what self-care is. Self-care can be as simple as I need the kitchen cabinets clear, or I don't want to go to bed with the sink full of dishes, or I take the load of laundry out and I put the load of laundry away. That can be as simple as what self-care looks like. And so I've really found it important in incorporating it into stacked intent of helping you find that personal growth with that self care to help you really find that healthy relationship you have with yourself.
Mhm. And so what kind of made you really dive into self-care? What was that journey like for you?
A lot, I mean, it's kind of something that I've done all my life, but a lot of it came when I was diagnosed with Crohn's, and it came to I really had to take care of myself of through my exercise, through how I eat, how I manage stress. And I kind of learned that as a freshman in college was my diagnosis. And so learning that balance, it became really important of what self-care looked like and being able to have the voice behind why that self-care is
Mhm.
important.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's isn't it crazy when we start to have the dis-ease in our bodies, when we start to really be like, "Oh shit, we actually should take care of ourselves," kinda thing?
Yeah, it's
It's
kind of it's interesting. I saw something the other day of people say, "Well, I would die for my child, but are you eating healthy, exercising, taking care of your health? Are you doing all those things? Because if you're not, then you may be slowly not taking care of yourself in that way."
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and you bring up a good point because a lot of people are like, "Well, I'll do the best for my kids," and, we've always got that kind of realm that the parents will eat itchy band before the kids will kinda thing, but it's it's kinda getting yourselves back into an awareness that those little ones are watching you, right? They're seeing how are you taking care of your teeth? How are you taking care of your bed routines? How are you taking care of your health and awareness? Because how are we supposed to know, right? As little goslings and ducklings behind mama and papa goose, right? Like these are things I think a lot of people either are really self-conscious and do a really good routine. Like there's some parents that they're up at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're doing their 2 hour workout before the kiddos are up because they need that for themselves, right? Because they want to show up betterment for themselves. Or you've got parents rolling out the same time that the kids and the coffee slapped on. Breakfast is a, microwavable, protein something breakfast, and then they're off and it's rat racing. Well, then those kiddos don't have a regulation, you know, kind of sensory or awareness, because how are they going to know? Right. So that's kind of a big thing. But you have a family as well.
Yes.
So how did that kind of navigate for you, really knowing through pregnancy and that journey to taking care of yourself to then having little ones, lick the walls with you?
Well, it all comes from that idea of when you show by example, right? And it's the simplest of when you have this healthy relationship with yourself, you're able to show that in your life. And so it's being able to show that managing stress, it's important. If you don't manage the stress, it's going to manage you. If you don't manage
Mhm.
the chaos, it's going to manage you. It's also looking at self-care can also really help our mental health. And so
Mhm.
it can help with that anxiety and depression that we feel in different parts of our life. Or we can have that, it can increase our energy levels because we've taken care of ourselves, of like we either have a bedtime routine, a morning routine. Routines are not bad things. Routines
Mhm.
help regulate our bodies of what our bodies need, and they help give us some kind of resilience because we are able to practice, okay, here's what I need. But if you have a setback, you can always come back to what that setback is.
Mhm.
Okay, this set me back. Well, let's reevaluate and look at why we might need it to look differently. And
Yeah.
so I've found that self care really ties into that healthy relationship with self, because if you don't have that self care, then you're going to struggle with that healthy relationship with self too.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's so important because a lot of people are like, well, this week didn't work out really well or that didn't happen. Okay, that's fine. Let's just get back to the routine of like, what do you need? And like, we all know that there's Christmas and holidays and we might have extra sugars or different things, but when you're consistently, and that's what we've kind of just really witnessed through COVID, is nobody had to get up. Like, we were business in the front and no, like, major party in the back kinda thing, and, we're really kind of sometimes missing that, put your hair up, get your things put together, feel good, brush your teeth because 'cause you're gonna actually counter human beings that are not in your household, right? So, those I think are crucial what you're saying, and your brain needs to create an automacy connection between your neurological pathways, so it takes 66 days for that new thinking and that habitual pattern to actually become an automatic response. So don't be frustrated. Just if you break the cycle, you're just going to have to recount it for 66 days.
Mhm. And you just have to find those ways to help. I mean, everything we have is a habit, whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. And so you just sometimes you've had something as a habit for so many years of your life that it's gonna take some, "Ooh, that didn't go well today. Okay, I have to start over tomorrow," in order for you to even be able to get there. And so you have to, I mean, exercise can be a great one. There are some days that we might hit exercise right where we wanna hit it, and there are other days we don't. But
Mhm.
the important thing is trying to get up and move, and it might look different in one stage of life than it is another stage of life. Of like, you may be able to get up and go to the gym and be at the gym for 2 hours at one stage in your life, but when you've transitioned into being a parent, you may need to do it during gymnastics practice or whatever sport practice it is. So you might have to walk around the building a few times, or
Mhm.
you're able to drop your kid off and you need to exercise where they are. And so it may just be that you have to allow it to look different than what you might have pictured it looking like.
Yeah, I love that. That wraps it up in a bow just pretty, pretty, pretty. That was perfect. And another thing that I really wanted to, let you all know as you're listening, you know, we all are here journeying through our own oceans, right? And that might be some harder things that you are trying to navigate at this moment in time. But what do you feel was your hardest self care kind of practice or reality check you needed? And how did you kind of combat that for listeners kind of really struggling in their moments?
I think one of my biggest was journaling in my devotions. I
Mm.
always, since I was little, I've always done it as I went to bed. So, like, it was a part of I brushed my teeth, I took my shower, I got ready for bed, I did my journaling. Well, as I transitioned to getting married, I found I could still do it. It would have been fine, but that was the time that me and my husband, we have some different like question cards that we'll do sometimes just so that your conversation is not just, well, how was your day? Fine. How was your day? Fine. But it actually gives you questions, and then It might be something that you know, it might be something you know nothing about, but it allows you to create a conversation. And we found that that was better at night because that's
Mm,
the end of our day. Well, for somebody that's for 20 years did her journaling at night, I had to find a new place for it. And I found that it was really important in my self care because it was just how I focused my day. And even though I did it at night, it focused my day at night. Like it
mhm.
focused me for the next day because it
Yeah,
wrapped up that day.
yeah.
And so it took me about a year and a half of our marriage to really figure out where that could go in my day. And so now he gets up, he goes off to work. I usually get up at the same time he does. I do it after he leaves. And so I'm still
Okay.
able to do my journaling and my devotion time, but it's at a different point in the day because it doesn't
Mhm.
affect time that we have together. And so it's in self-care, it's prioritizing what you need for self-care, but it may have to look different than it has looked.
Yeah.
And it's accepting that that's okay. It's okay for it to look different, but you got to figure out where it goes. Because if you just let it go, like I struggled in that year and a half of figuring out where do I need this to go? Where
Yeah.
can it go for me? And once I kind of figured out that pattern, it's been helpful. It's
Mhm.
different to do it in the beginning of the day than the end of the day,
Yeah.
but it works and it works for the stage of our relationship that we're in. And so
Mhm.
it's in self-care, it's okay, this is what I need for self-care, but it's looking at it and evaluating how it might need to look at that season of life.
Well, I'm just giggling over here because, I'm thinking about, when I used to just curl my hair, know that I got time to do things, made a tea, did this practice. Yeah, you throw husband, kids, life, dog, work, all these other things into it. It's a holy shit circus. So you're just trying to just get something looking like something. So, it's just when you shared that story that does hit home for, myself and probably a lot of people who are listening and viewing this. It's you need to know that your world is changing, it's morphing, but it's also the balance and the excitement that really gets to kind of dive in and showcase that, what, there's so much excitement forward if we're really willing to just say, hey, this is what I need, you need, and then let's come up with the best plan that we possibly can. And it might be really freaking messy in that moment. Like you said, a year and a half, that's a lot to kind of, navigate 300 and plus days, right? Of what was so routine for most of your existence, right? So I'm just like, y'all don't get yourselves worked up just because it's not the way you envisioned and see it, especially when you're going through health changes, age changes, children or their wellness changes, right? Because I think there's a lot of people who, do have a bit, sometimes they feel of baggage when they come into a relationship and they don't know how to kind of ask for more of the other person's time. Did you feel like that was something that you had to journey through as well?
No, I think it was just more of we were but so I went from being single for like I had two short-term relationships and then I was single for 8 years before my husband and I like dated, met, got engaged and got married. And so 8 years of living on your own and working in a full-time career, you have your own habits. You
Yeah.
have your own way of spending time. And on the other side, he had his own habits too. And he had ways he wanted to spend his time. And then it was like this thing of, but I want to spend time with you. Okay, but we both need our alone time. Like
Mhm.
we both do. And so you're starting to see a difference of like the other weekend we were out on the land and he went off and played by himself for like 2.5 3 hours. He gave me picture updates of where he was just because I was like, can you at least let me know where you're existing so if I have to come find you I can, not having to just like start at ground zero.
Right?
And so, but he had the best time. And so it's like, and then sometimes I need my alone time, or he likes his solitude time. I like the more people can come, that sounds great. So finding that balance of, okay, quality time as a couple, quality time as a family, quality time with other people, you just have to find that balance. And you have to plan it. You've got
Yeah.
to plan it, or otherwise your calendar just becomes overly inundated with really everybody else's needs. And so
Well,
you have all these outside influences before you're able to establish what you need inside.
yeah, all I was gonna say is welcome people pleasers. Announcing anybody who is in the people pleaser category, please listen at this moment.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean it happens if you're, and so it's finding what you need for yourself, and then going out to the next level, to your husband or your spouse, and then to your children, your parents, your siblings, close friends, and then out to an acquaintance, and then out to the outside world. And so I think it's really finding what you need. And
Mhm.
if you don't show healthy relationship, healthy self care, your kids are going to pick up on the same things, the same
Yeah.
habits, the same. And so when you model what's healthy, that helps them understand what it can really look like to, in a healthy way, take care of yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, like I said, we can't just all be sitting in the sidelines eating the shit and then asking everybody else to do better, right? Like it is all about the habitual patterns of your herd, your community, your placements, and that's why it is important to know like what kind of friends do you hang out cuz that's going to show what your kids are going to hang out with, right? And then you have my favorite is what I want to share on, these self-care moments, and especially when you're kind of a bit of the counter opposite, like you were sharing about you and your husband, but we're talking about the big outdoorsy people who love to go hunting or fishing or quadding or, work out on the vehicles or projects out onto their garages. And then you got the other ones that are maybe a bit more like cozy up with a book, go for a shopping day, go out for dinners and, watch a movie, right? There's a lot of that counter opposite energy that sometimes really does try to pull away at a relationship. But I always laugh because a lot of couples, they'll come and they'll have sessions and they're like, well, I just think it's just them getting drunk and them not behaving and them not doing stuff. And I said, sweetheart, it could look like a hangover 2.7. Okay. And that could look like the movie and Fear Factors, right? A lot of women after that started putting a lot of tracking devices and, like, different things of restrictions about boys' trips or girls' trips or vice versa. I've witnessed some crazy women journeys and trips as well. But you have to find your fundamental self-care and boundaries so that you understand that you're loving you first and then understanding you're not needing that just because of your partner. So once you kind of get to that root of working with your self-care, then it's not going to feel like this big of a deal, or sometimes it is good to just go out there and have a conversation with them while they're tinkering or doing stuff. Then that way they're maybe more willing to do that boring shopping trip out to your favorite stop, or, pick you up something because they thought about you. It's always, I feel like, a give and take on self-care in a relationship because a lot of people don't talk about that relationship self-care.
No, and it is. You've got to look at, and it may be that, okay, while you're off doing your thing, I'm off doing mine. And then
Mhm.
it's it's setting that agenda, because if somebody really doesn't want to go do something with you, but you can find a buddy that does, then that's a time you get to spend with somebody else a little bit. But that doesn't mean that in a relationship you don't need to find some things that you can do together. And
Mhm.
that's where self-care really, it's being able to vocalize what you need together and
Yeah.
individually and as a whole group. Like, it's just, you've got to be able to identify, but it starts with each individual being able to identify what each individual needs.
Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of time too is like it's okay to have that outside of your home, but it depends on what your all morals, mottos, virtues, values, code of conducts are in your four walls. Because if your friends are still in that single, old school, maybe not the healthiest choices that you really want to represent anymore, but you still want to, feel that, live vicariously through them, you gotta really have that mature, I think, awareness to really navigate what are you truly needing out of this, because I think that's also gonna put a little bit of a dent in your self-care practice, because then you're coming home, then you're exhausted, and then you're not feeling good, money is overspent, and that's on both genders. Like, that's not just one does worse things than the other. All I'm saying is what you get to bring that truth and that belief into, then that's maybe what's a bit more healthier on maybe doing more double dates with like other like-minded people, maybe finding a bit more of a church or friends, or working with people that are business owners and they kind of understand that, versus somebody who you're friends with is just 9 to 5 and he says fuck the system, right? Like, it's just really understanding who do you hang around, because your self-care then is impacted, I think, quite a bit.
Yeah, your self-care. And so it goes back to that of when you know what you need and you know what's, and then it's evaluating what season of life are you in? Are you
Mhm.
in a singlehood, or are you in a marriage, or are you in a family? Like what season are you having to plan for? And it's making that a priority, and it's planning from within. And it's part of why in that dating stage it's really important to talk about values and talk about what you expect in certain places, because it's hard to throw it on somebody after you've gotten married of nope, this is all changing now. And so
Yes.
it's conversations of when you really understand yourself, then you can really have some really important valid questions and conversations before you're in a marriage and you find something that you want to do one thing and they always get their way, you never do. And so that can help navigate some of that balance.
Hmm. Yeah, you brought up such a gold mine of a theme about relationships and dating, because people are like, "Well, when we were dating, this is how it was, and it was so much fun, and it was this and that." And I said, "Yeah, because it was the hunt. It was the fun time of what we're trying to, capture, fish, bring that trophy home, because that's what they're looking for." But you should really sit with 3 months of being in that person's space and really understanding if they are that avid of a outdoors person, or that into that type of genre of music, or that into um kind of fun medicinal or adventurous adult drugs and alcohol, right? Like, you're gonna find out a lot about a person's habits, and in 3 months, you should be able to already start seeing that. 6 months, you will definitely guaranteed to see that. 9 months, that is like set in stone. So, yes, you guys can grow as a team and do some maybe united things. But when I get women or men saying, I thought she would grow out of that, or I thought that would stop, yeah, that shit don't. So, just a FYI, 411 on that. This is gonna kind of continue because it's habitual, right? So,
And a lot of what people are, depending on how your age, it's who they are. They've kind of morphed into who they're going to be.
mhm.
And so that it's the 369 rule of dating, and that's your 3 months, you're in a honeymoon phase of really getting to know each other, potentially looking at what you're going to be. That 3 to 6 is where you might start to see some conflicts arise and be able to navigate what some of those things are, because you're going to start seeing more of who somebody truly is. And then the 6 to 9 months is that period that you're going to start seeing whether it can be a long term commitment or not. But that's also why you've got to be careful where you put yourself in dating. Like, really starting slow with dating, it's not a bad place. It
Mhm.
really can be a healthy thing for you, because then at any point in that 3, 6, or 9 months, you can go, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to be able to go past this. It just doesn't work for me. And so you're wanting to have deep conversations with people and connections. And one of the biggest things is get them around different people. Go around their people. Go around your
Mhm.
people. Be around your family, their family. Take them to public. Traveling with somebody can show you a tremendous amount too. So, like,
Yeah.
go in different situations. If you do the same old thing and you never like vary what you see, you're not going to see them in different situations that might come up after you get married.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that, but seeing them around your people might look different than seeing them around their people. And it might need to be different people. Do they have a specific group of friends they're closer to?
Mhm.
Probably the group of friends you want to see them around the most.
Yeah.
And so it's finding opportunities to be able to see that.
Mhm. And that's where I think, again, how do they talk about money? How do they deal with frustrations? How do they deal with if there is a loss or a problem or a tragedy, what does that look like, right? Like those are very crucial ways to knowing, because if that's not going to balance and jive with your self-care and your awareness, that's going to take a lot of extra work. Then you are going to have to continue to prepare and take care of you if this is something that really isn't what you're used to in your environment. So it's either sometimes a good thing of expansion and growth, or sometimes this is where we hear gaslighting, narcissistic, bipolar, codependency, attachment issues, right? All these fancy words that are just kind of blowing up the tiki talk right now. And everybody becoming self-diagnosed and therapists. These are big things about relationships can be magical if you're willing to really know those fundamentals with you and then expand deeper into all.
It's knowing with yourself, and it's knowing that nobody's going to be perfect in a relationship. And so that's where that communication and that being able to have conversations, and that goes with family, that goes with romantic, that goes with a friend, professional. You've got to, those are all relationships. And so you've
Mhm.
got to be able to have conversations in each of those settings. Now, each of those conversations is going to look different because you're not going to talk in a professional setting necessarily the same way you will in a friend or a romantic setting, but you still have a relationship there. So you
Mhm.
still have to have conversations.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of people are like, hoofed. This is a lot to kind of dive into if you're kind of in that single Pringle energy. But, a lot of people who are in relationships, they're like, well, shit, I can't, like, the return policy is not like Costco. So, or Sam's Club out in your guys' area. But, what do you think is your biggest tips on that discovery then, if you are in a longer termed, already committed, now you guys are kind of navigating that journey of figuring out like, shit, we kind of don't really like each other, but we still kind of want to be together, right? Like, what do you kind of offer with that?
It's really looking at, okay, what can help us be in a healthy place? Do we have mutual respect, communication? Do we Are we sharing values and honesty? And if we're not, why are we not? Are these things that we've grown different ways in? And if that's the case, then we might have to evaluate what our relationship is. And
Mhm.
then, do we have regular communication? Do we regularly talk and check in with each other? Or is it, hi, and that's all you have in a day? Well, if that's all you have in a day, you're not actually talking to somebody and having a satisfying. And then it's finding, you've got to be happy, satisfied, and that's part of being in a healthy place. And
Mhm.
a lot of times you got to find that with yourself before you can find that in a relationship, in a romantic relationship. And then in the maintaining side, it's looking at what's affecting everybody that's involved. What needs to be understood? Is there a misunderstood? Is there communication that's not happening? Are you hearing something different than what's being said? And if
Mhm.
that's the case, then we got to be able to sit down and have that open dialogue to be able to have that conversation. And it's being able to find how we communicate. And it's not easy. It's not
Mhm.
easy, but neither is having an unhealthy relationship. It's not
Yeah.
easy either. And so if you can find the place to find healthy with yourself, you'll find the place to have healthy within a relationship. And
Mhm.
it might be that that particular partnership doesn't can't be healthy because both people have to be willing to work on themselves and the relationship for it to maintain in a healthy space.
Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of people, have really been seeing this like yearly or annually date night where they go and talk about like really big topics or, get away to somewhere's quiet, put away the phones, they've got a good babysitter for the kiddos if they've got them. And they really sit and put kind of like a board meeting. I always laugh because I work with like a lot of kind of outdoors or farmer or oil patch kind of households and stuff. And I always laugh. I was like, well, don't we have daily safety check-in meetings every goddamn day? And they're like, yes. And I said, do you not think that that's something you might need to imply as well? Because we're all working on some sort of mental load. And I think that's like another big thing that we don't realize is because one of the household things that they're worrying about all the finances, the other person's worrying about all the chores, the cleaning, and that process of the household. The other one's got the grocery. This one's got that. That one's got that. So if we're not maybe understanding what that other person is maybe more fixated on because of their childhood or their trauma or something that has been a part of their past, that they sometimes don't really feel connected because one thinks it's doing more than the other. And that's when we start finding a real greased up, slippery slope and not knowing how we're going to stop this. And the blame game starts, right? So that's where we say pull the lever and just eject from that blame game because none of you are going to win. You've got a lot of scorched earth by the time you try and figure out who wins that battle. And then, like you said, now there's a big elephant in the room. Now there's something that is misunderstood. And that starts to down spiral a relationship very quickly if you don't have the tools to really navigate that.
Yeah, and so it's finding the tools, it's knowing it's okay to find help. And if your partner's not willing to do it with you, you can do it and start to see. And it's okay to start to find that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to make shifts. And sometimes our society looks at making shifts or that self care is a selfish thing. And it's not, it's
Yeah.
something that's going to help you in being the best present person. And so you've got to find that space. And it may be all you simply need to do is add in a 15-minute walk to your day, and that
Mm-hmm.
can be a family activity. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's finding that space. And then with conversation, it's finding space, one, that you're in a safe place. Two, if there are little ears around that don't need to be a part of the conversation, that's not the time to have the conversation. And so it's finding the space and the time. And that's where going and having specific time that you do it can be really important for that overall communication.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the little ears and the kind of the maturity of a conversation because I'm really sick and tired and it's a little bit of a call out where people are like, "Well, daddy didn't do this and well, you know how mommy gets when we don't do that," right? Like you're not looking to have more on your team because, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest announcement and like mic drop of the year is that you two are on the same team. So we need to create a healthy foundation and really navigate that. If you've got shit to stir out with your spouse, then give it at that time when it's somewhere else, but then you're training other little ones to really either have a disregret on being that they're always going to be a mean woman because they're going to end up like their mom, or they're always going to be a forgetful boy because they're just like their dad, right? Like those negative connotations really take away from self, and all the self-care you can slap in there is just going to keep sliding off because we don't have something it's going to stick to, because now you've really slicked up that person feeling like they're not worth holding on to.
Well, and there's a few things that you do there. One, you're showing them how they're going to treat their future partner.
Mhm.
You're showing them what to accept from a future partner.
Mhm.
And so you're creating a cycle of critical and hurtful remarks that are not helping build them up. And
Yeah.
so it creates a space that's not okay. And one place that you can watch if you really want to hear how you sound, if you ever just sit back and watch like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old play with something like stuffed animals or Barbies or whatever they're like imagining with, you can hear yourself in it.
Oh,
So you just sit back and watch that, you'll hear how you sound. And if you don't like what you're hearing,
yeah.
then there's something you need to adjust because they got it from you.
My favorite is where the little girl's playing with, Barbie and Ken, and, "Well, mommy told you to do this," and, "Daddy, you need to take out the trash," and, "Why don't I pay the bills in this house?" And they're just playing house, and they, like you said, they're sponges to that environment, and I'm sorry if this is a harsh reality that us 2, Chiquitas are bringing to your kind of view now, but the good thing is it is all able to be cleansed, released, processed, worked on, and have the abilities that I would love to take away kind of the inging in people's tone when they're talking about relationships and self-care. Well, I'm trying. I am being the best that I can, right? Like I can do better. I will do better. I see now. So thank you for that. And then just removing the inging of that will definitely kind of bring a hell of a lot more clarity and commitment because that's what a lot of self-care is looking at commitment.
Yeah, that it is. It's looking at what you need and it's staying committed to it. And
Mhm.
it's reevaluating as it needs to be reevaluated.
Yeah.
As your seasons change, it may have to change a little bit. And
Mhm.
that's okay.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about seasons because a lot of people are like, I just gotta go, 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 go. This is how our household is. This is how it goes. It is da 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 da. It's hockey, and then it's soccer, and then it's baseball, and then it's dance, and then it's this. Have a season, right? Really navigate what that looks like. The good old planet didn't come up with snow, winter, fall, and spring for no reason. So us human beings have an internal um I call it an equal clock that you will start to kind of nest in and take more rest versus some days you're just up with the sky cuz you're just loving the sun and doing more things, but we always see that in other climates that when they're pretty consistent in that, every day they have a siesta, they have something to reboot and bring in that expansion. So knowing you can take a break is important. So really navigate that season. I love what you said about that.
Well, and it may be that you have to look at everything that you have going on and you may have to prune away different aspects of it. Of
Mhm.
okay, we have I think the gym and exercise is a good one. Okay, I want to go to the gym, but at the same time I want to do that, I've got to take a kid to an activity. Well, you can still exercise while that kid's at that activity. And depending on where your gym is, you may be able to drop kid off at activity and go to gym. But if
Mhm.
you can't, you could still something like walk or see what's right there around and available for you to still be able to do your exercise. And that way you still get your exercise. It just might not look like I'm going to spend 2 hours at the gym because
Mhm.
that's not necessarily feasible at that season. And so you might look at your schedule and prune away the gym membership because it doesn't work right now, or prune away okay, on Sunday afternoons, this is what we're doing. And so we don't really do activities then.
Mhm.
Or it's really looking at what works and letting it be fluent and fluctuate, but pruning it away to where you don't feel this overmass chaos happening.
Mhm. And I think that's where we get so busy trying to not be busy, and it just robs us so deeply of that. And Yeah. I The biggest thing is you gotta understand that there's a cost. If you keep trying to get away from that parking ticket, you will be caught up in it somehow, some way, and that's just kind of the boomerang of self-care in that relationship. So, again, you're kinda having to fight one evil with the other sometimes because you're like, "Well, if I don't do this, or if I do this, or I do that, how do you find is the best way to help that head noise or that chatter that really keeps us away from doing those things?"
It's being able to have an honest conversation with yourself. Because if you can't start with honesty there, you're not going to be honest anywhere else in your life. If you can't look at what's bothering you, what's happening with you, or if you can't evaluate yourself and honestly talk there and let it be positive, don't let it all be
Mhm.
negative.
Mhm.
If you can't start there, you're going to struggle to have that conversation with anybody else around you.
Yeah.
And so that self-care you'll struggle with because you're not honestly looking at what you need for self-care.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's just so crucial because if you don't, you're just really kicking yourself in the good old tushy for no reason. And then we always complain, why does everything hurt all the time, right? You have to be your biggest cheerleader, advocate, president, your own ambassador for yourself because nobody else is going to save you. A lot of people will try, but then you're always going to get in the negative connotation being like, well, they didn't do it the way I would. So, like, and then you're just in resent, right? It's a vicious circle. So, it's really important to just take that time and navigate what that heart means for you. So,
And it
yeah.
becomes important because you're the only voice that you know. You're the one that
Mhm.
knows yourself the best. And if you don't vocalize it, nobody else knows what you need either.
For sure. So, is there anything else that you would really love to like dive into about your story or your journey that really is something that we haven't talked or tapped into that you would like to bring?
I think the biggest is know that within transition, because so I got married, we sold a house, moved states, he started a new job, I launched a business, we moved in with my parents for a little while. Um, and then we had some losses from my grandparents and miscarriage. So, in all those transitions, and they all happened very close together, make all the
Mhm.
changes at one time. It's a great thing to do. But in those transitions, it's coming back to the okay, what do I need? What does my
Mhm.
partner need? And knowing that if we can both communicate that, then we're going to come better out on the other side because
Mhm.
we're not just guessing, because you have to vocalize what you need sometimes. Somebody's not going to be able to guess at it. And so in my journey, it was really being able to vocalize that of like, okay, my food's a big one of I understand you might want to eat dinner together, but I had to eat 2 hours before you got home.
Mm.
So it's I couldn't snack and then I didn't want to eat it after that because I
Yeah.
tend to eat dinner at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. Because eating after that, it was turning into like 9:30, 10 p.m.
Mm.
That didn't
Mhm.
work for me. And so now we really only eat together on the weekends, which is hard sometimes. But we needed different things. So we weren't
Mhm.
eating things anyways, but it was finding that, okay, here's what I've got to have. And okay, here's what I've got to have. And so it was having that conversation and finding that balance. And so that'd be my biggest encouragement to people is you've got to understand what you need.
Yeah.
And during transitions, it may not be easy to figure it out. You may be stuck in the middle of a blizzard and you have to get to the other side before you can figure it out.
Mhm.
But know that it might take time. Know that transitions aren't easy. And so you just got to reevaluate what you might need in that transition
Mhm.
and be able to vocalize it. Like you've
Yeah.
got to vocalize it to the people that are in your life. And if you don't, it's not going to help. I mean, it's like me and my husband just moved again recently. And I think we've been driving 45 minutes to the gym. And
Mm.
in this move, I said, 20 minutes is my max.
Yeah.
Wherever that 20-minute max is where we're looking to live.
Yeah.
And so that was important to me. And so that's what we figured out. And
Yeah.
so But that's what I encourage you. You've got to be able to vocalize it. You've got to be willing to talk, and you've got to be willing to share, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah. And that's where I was just gonna kind of pull in with, when you talk about loss and then self-care, right? Well, that shit just goes out the window, right? Because you don't even know how to sometimes breathe, eat, function, do anymore. So, going through loss, how did you navigate that with losing loved ones? Then, if you don't mind talking about what you had to do about for you during your miscarriage, because I had one as well.
So, with the loss of my grandmothers, one passed away the Tuesday of my wedding week,
Mm,
which I knew she wasn't going to be at my wedding because when I got engaged, I mean, she was 98 when she passed away.
okay.
So, when I got engaged, she said, I will not be at your wedding, but I look forward to hearing about it because it would have been a 9-hour trip for her, and she just
Yeah.
one way, and she was just to the point she couldn't travel anymore.
Mhm.
But she told me what she needed, and so what I had to deal with that is I didn't really realize how sad it was gonna be of I didn't get to share it with her. Like, I didn't get
Yeah.
to take her the pictures and show her that was my grandmother that had really been with me through my honesty of the relationships I had. My last boyfriend, nobody really liked how he treated me, and so I didn't get to share my husband with her, and I didn't get to show her because, I mean, we started dating and our wedding was within a 9-month period. So like we
Mhm.
didn't get the chance to go see her. And so we didn't get to share with her the wedding experience. And so I just had to figure out how to turn some of that to memory and know what she would have been excited about,
Mhm.
how she would have enjoyed it, and that those aspects of it. And I mean, she was a part of parts of it. I had things that were of her that were kind of incorporated throughout my
Yeah.
wedding, but she still wasn't there. And I knew she wasn't going to be at the wedding, but the after of not getting to share. And so it was
Mhm.
its own loss. And I just had to learn how it's okay that it's a loss. You have to acknowledge it and then process it into a memory.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the same thing with my other grandmother. Neither one of my grandmothers got to come to my wedding, but she passed away a couple months later. And it was just both of them lived great lives. Both of them were in their late 90s.
Yeah.
And they lived really good lives until that point. And so it was just knowing the excitement of some of it and knowing
Mhm.
what they had put into me. And then miscarriage, it took me a while to deal with miscarriage, uh,
Yeah.
because it went from those losses to a friendship that went through some changes. And it was like, oh, it's no big deal. I was early in my pregnancy. I think we found out it like because of my Crohn's, I know my body pretty well.
Mhm.
So I knew at about 4.5, 5 weeks, we knew we were pregnant, and I miscarried at 6. And so
Okay.
it was very early, and it was like, okay, no big deal. It was early. It's that most people don't even know that they were
Mhm.
at that stage.
Yeah.
So it took a lot because then it was like, oh wait, this is a big deal. It
Mhm.
mattered a lot. And then I had to I processed through journaling. I processed through really realizing that it affected me more than I thought, which
Right.
was not a place that I realized. It probably took me about 8 or 9, almost a year to come around to really looking at, oh, this is really sad. Oh, this is really disappointing. Oh, it's for the first time when people said things like, well, you're not a parent, you're not a mom. It's like,
Mm.
I wanted to be. Like,
Yeah.
and because up until that point, no, I didn't have a desire because I wasn't married. I didn't have a relationship.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't a part of that stage of my life. But at that point, it was like, but it is now. And
Mhm.
something that we both want. Though we didn't expect that pregnancy, it was still hard because it was like, but but we lost this, oh, we're gonna be a family, oh, we're gonna and then to watch people have kids around you, some
Mhm.
get upset about it or just aren't glad that they had a kid or make negative comments, you start to realize how just the smallest comments can hurt. I mean,
Mhm.
like, well, just be glad you're not pregnant. well, but I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
the, but you're not a mom, you don't understand. Or
Mhm.
even just the, you have plenty of time because you don't have kids, but I wanted it. And so I really had to come to this place of understanding that really any stage you are in a miscarriage, it's going to affect you in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know that you know what it's going to affect you like, but it's going to affect you. And so you have to process it. And I
Mhm.
did after reading some books. I read Unexpecting, which is by Rachel Lewis, I believe. Don't quote me, but I believe that's right. She talks about the whole process of unexpected losses, and it's really a child loss and a miscarriage losses. And so reading through that, and then in October, I went on a retreat with my little sister and my mom. And it was a retreat that it was like, okay, I really need to do something totally different that takes me to a different space, a different
Mm.
environment, and lets me do something that I've dreamed about since I was like a 12-year-old little girl. And so we went to Greece. And
Mm.
so it was the retreat itself was like 6 days, but me and my sister were like, well, we're in Greece. So we tacked on like an extra 5 days. And the retreat part of that trip really gave me time because it was the retreat title was The Art of Living Well.
Mm.
And it's okay, what do you want your days to look like? What does the art of living well look like for you?
Mhm.
Well, I had really been on the journey through building my business of figuring out because, anytime you write something, build something, you get to really look at what it looks like in your life. And so I had already been on that process of as I
Mhm.
built my different courses and I've written my blog and my emails, I've really looked at, okay, I authentically want to be what is Becca? And that looks
Mm.
different in this season than it did 3 years ago. And so learning to love what my everyday looked like again because it looked different than what I thought.
Yeah.
And that trip gave me the space to answer these questions, to really focus in on this is all I'm here to focus on. I am focused on the reflection of what the art of living well looks like. And we did that through yoga sessions, we did that through art sessions, we did that through just the people I got to meet and talk to.
Yeah.
And so in that really helped me identify it because the so my sister and my mom I knew going on this trip, but I met 9 other people that I'd never met before.
Mhm.
So the words that some of them would say helped me remember parts of myself that I loved, of
Yeah.
just being fearless in the actions I had, or loving to capture the moments in the pictures, or loving what my smile looks like, or
Mhm.
genuinely loving what the day is. I Sunsets and sunrises are some of my favorite things because none of them are the same.
Mm.
You can see them anywhere and they're so cool. And
Yeah.
so nobody would get up with me. I tried a few times, but nobody would get up with me to go sit and watch the sun come up. But it was finding things like that of, okay, these are what I need as Becca. And travel is one of those things that also was something I needed.
Mm.
It's one that me and my husband have had to like talk about because he doesn't understand the travel the same way I do.
Yeah.
Uh, I've sacrificed lots across my budget so that I could go do things like
Mhm.
go travel, go places, get to go on trips. Whereas he hadn't traveled as much as I have. And so we had to have that conversation of, well, I have to have this. Like it's not necessarily a want, but I've discovered it's something that helps give me some of what my identity is. And so
Mhm.
I had to revisit some of that in a miscarriage. And I had to revisit that it's it's one of those places that people don't talk about until you've had a miscarriage, and then you get to hear lots of different stories and sadness. And I think one of the things that helped me is I have somebody in my life that I've watched their journey. I've
Mm.
watched their infertility journey, I've watched their struggle, and they just had a baby. And so watching that journey was like, it might yours everybody's looks different. Some people
Mhm.
no problem. They have however many pregnancies they want, no miscarriages, and they're good. Some people don't. And so it's
Mhm.
a place of, in those losses, not losing who you are and being
Mm.
able to find what you need through that. And I think I really had one, I had to accept that they were losses that were going to affect me. And
Mhm.
that was one that I struggled with because I didn't realize that my grandmothers would affect me as much as they did.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that a miscarriage would affect me as much as it did. And so
Mhm.
I was able to come back to realizing that I a lot of that trip in October on that retreat helped me deal with the process of identifying that the grief was real. The grief was there. And you have to realize that that would have been 2.5 years after my grandmother's passed away, and then about a year and a half ish, almost 2 years after a miscarriage. So I mean, it was a process, and
Yeah.
I think that's what we don't give credit to in loss sometimes. Is it is a process, and it's not going to happen overnight. And
Yeah.
you've got to be willing to put in the footwork. And for me, there were a couple of books that I read, devotions that I read, and journaling it out that really helped me find what those pieces were. And the retreat helped. Like
Mhm.
I really do believe that going on things like retreats give you a space to see what the retreat theme is
Yeah.
and sit completely in that focus for however many days you're on that.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that journey, and there's so much that our souls sometimes will have to endure. And just your sharing and story, I'm like, holy shit, we are living mirrored relationships and experiences on some of this stuff. But um, I think that's why you get to make that clarity to your soul about making choices, and it doesn't maybe sometimes make sense to other people. Like for my our wedding, I really wanted to find the dress by myself because I have gone dress shopping with girlfriends and my sister and other people before, and it's a bit of a shit show on all of the experiences I've witnessed. So I wanted something that I just really wanted to find that was for me, because I also had that kind of grieving moment when my auntie passed away, and she was kind of more of like a mom to me than an auntie. And I just remember when we were shopping for my sister's dress, we were just a bit hurt knowing that she couldn't be there. So I just wanted to have that moment for myself versus it being like keeping up with everybody else's feelings and all that kind of stuff. I really wanted to be in the dressing room for myself. And that was taken not very well from family. And then we chose to elope, and we made that decision before we found out we were pregnant. And that was crazy in itself because we literally just had 3 weddings that year. And I was like, I always said I was gonna have like a 600 plus old school Ukrainian wedding. The whole hall was gonna be packed, everybody was gonna be invited, and we literally eloped for ourselves. And that was the best day ever. Best day ever. And then the amount of tsunami shit show that happened after that was has been a ripple and has been that journey, but it was something of kind of that self-care journey that him and I needed. We needed to know what our vows were for each other. And then we did kind of like a Thanksgiving shindig and reception afterwards with family and stuff. The amount of shit we dealt with that reception, because again, as I have been event planning for over 20 years now, on retreats and facilitations, mediations and everything, I've seen rodeos, and that is all I was trying to mitigate and try and make fun and all that stuff. As much as I tried to play God in that situation, it did not happen. So there was a bit of loss of like, I had to tell some family members, please, like, I love you, but please just don't show up fake. That all was what my boundary was. And then now it's being that they were told that they weren't welcome. Well, that was bullshit. It was just something I needed for my self care in that day, that this is what I needed for my day. and what my husband needed for his day. Those were very crucial things. So we had a big talking to with his family about same thing, either show up or don't. We are not going to judge you for it. It just means that we were asking for those boundaries, and boundaries and self-care on those kinds of things in your relationship make or break it. Because I think a lot of people get caught up being like, well, it's my mother, so I have to choose her over you. Okay, well, that's where shit starts again. We're greasing a big slope again on where we're going to be heading. So it's navigating that with your partner, like you said, really having those like, so about that, what are we going to be working on towards that? And then we miscarried the day the day after the wedding, the elopement. So that was kind of the same thing of like having the highest high and then having the lowest low. And that was overwhelming, because I have held parenting groups. I've worked with women and partners through fertility journeys, helped people through their miscarriages. So, like you said, I really appreciate how you were honest about your miscarriage story. Was um, no, it's fine. I'm a farmer. Something was not okay. The baby had its time. I was able to be the carrier and the mother of that soul for what it needed, and I was honored and blessed with the journey. But like you said, when Mother's Day came around, I thought I was going to be okay. I was not motherfucking okay. Like, that was a journey and a half, and it's just kind of coming into its placement of taking that time. And I took a whole year before I have been open and bringing this to the platform, because it is about that discovery, and then having what you needed in self-care be judged or manipulated by other people, that is something hard to navigate. And you just really need to understand they are also kind of grieving or confused in their own. It doesn't make it right. I am not standing and advocating for that, but you then need to understand that's why taking care of you first is so important.
Oh yeah, it is, and that's what you is. Everybody has their own grief, though.
Mhm.
You have to, especially something like a grandparent. A grandparent, depending on your relationship with your grandparent, is going to depend on how you grieve, and so not everybody is going to grieve the same way on something like that,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And not
Mhm.
everybody needs the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
I'm a person at funerals that I'm good never looking in a casket.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm good just to be there if I need to, but like never look in a casket. Fine, you got people that's what they need for their closure.
Mhm.
That's okay. But with a miscarriage, one thing that I had to find in my relationship was he was grieving in his own way, but it didn't mean saw it the same way. And so
Yeah.
we had a few of those things of like, I don't understand why it doesn't affect you. Well, it is. I just don't choose to focus there. And so
Mhm.
that finding some of that, I believe, is really important of even in a partnership, it's gonna be seen differently. And it's okay, but you've got to find a safe space to be
Yeah.
able to have that conversation sometimes. And it does come with all kinds of different people's expectations of, and elopement, I think that they can be so much fun. I've seen some that look like so much fun.
Yeah.
It's not a person that could do it.
Yeah.
My parents bought a piece of property in 2017, and me and my dad were riding around one day, and I said, "This would be such a cool place to get married." My
Mm.
father kept that filled up for 5.5 years, while, mind you, I had no boyfriend,
Right.
like no boyfriend.
Yeah.
And it's the field that so my husband proposed to me there. Uh,
Aw.
he had other plans, but the weather didn't cooperate like he was hoping.
Yeah.
But he proposed to me there. We got married there, and then our reception was in a field behind it. And I'm the
Yeah.
one that had the 600 plus guest list wedding, but it was because of this. that's just what I needed for that. And so
Yeah.
I think that's what it is when you're getting married, you're creating a union with somebody else.
Mhm.
So it's what do you guys need in that? And like, so in our wedding, both of us do jujitsu and we met on the jujitsu.
Ah, okay.
And so one of the biggest things, and I was an advocate of, my husband would go, whatever you want for the day. And I'm like, no, it's not just my day.
Yep.
Like it is ours. So what do you want? Well, one of the biggest things he wanted was for us to have a first role.
Oh.
And so, which is like an open
Yep.
mat jiu-jitsu, which totally makes sense because of how we met and what we do.
Yep.
But it was like, okay, well, where are we going to put this in the night? Because we
Yeah.
still need the first dance and all that. And so we did, and it was so much fun. And the
Yeah.
people that were jiu-jitsu in our world thought it was great. Now,
Yep.
watching the video back of our wedding is hysterical because one, the videographer is a professional videographer who is jiu-jitsu is his whole life, and he was so excited for this wedding to have jiu-jitsu in it.
Yep.
And so he's real focused in on it. Then the coach that where we met at his gym, you can see everybody that's so into it, and then you see the faces that are like, it's great. It's hilarious. And so, but that was so us. And there were other
Yeah.
parts of our wedding that were too. And it was like they strung my sister and my brother are such amazing people, but they strung lights like, I mean, Hallmark movie would be probably the easiest place to compare it in your brain, or like
Yep.
walking down a downtown that has the lights across the street.
Yeah.
And my sister and brother were down there as the ones to do it. And people kept going, that's not what she wants. That's not what she wants. And my sister said, I've been with her since she was like, I've been with her whole life.
Totally.
Y'all are all wrong.
Yeah.
And my sister and brother were right versus everybody else. Like, oh, this is how she wants it. I don't know
Yeah.
where you got that idea. And so it's in that. It's in the
Mhm.
mismatch and in your wedding and in building your relationship. What are the things that are really important to you? Hold those important. And then what are the things that you can let slide and can let change?
Yeah.
Let them.
Yeah. Yeah, I just like love that so much because like you said, it's a union of you two. So if it is a bale burning kind of party, or it is like a champagne shower kind of thing, or it is a jiu-jitsu roll and it's the first handoff on that, right? Like it's so important, and that's why, like, trust me, I wanted a whole big show and experience because I always love it. Our whole goal was to actually do a surprise wedding. And my husband, the negative Nancy he sometimes is, was just like, well, what if people don't show up? And then they're upset about this and da 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 da. And I said, no, I'll coax them, even though they'll probably figure it out or something. And I just, when we got to really trying to figure this all out, I said, look, ceremony is the most important thing because I got to live with your ass for the rest of my life. So that I need to know that you're going to be truthful in and not judged because your brothers are making fun of you because what we do in our practice. And he's like, no, I agree. So we really then said, okay, ceremony is just for us then. And then the reception, I didn't care if people were too intoxicated or too mad at each other. I just knew then that way our day wasn't quote unquote ruined. So then after the reception, I didn't have all this overwhelming expectation. We didn't do traditional speeches. We just asked whoever wanted to come up and share stories while we were all busting our guts and laughing and peeing our pants. And it was the same thing, like the lights and your twinkles and your theme. We got a big inflatable dance tent and put a white screen on it and projected like old school 80s because I love the old school, music and stuff. And we just danced the night away, and it was so much fun because we set those expectations and those boundaries for what we were wanting and needing, and let those know who could support and what people didn't want to support. Then we just knew that we were making the best that we could. Where you do hear a lot of horror stories about relationships, and that after the wedding it's where it all ended before it even got to start. So, self-care in your matrimony is super crucial. And like you said also about, the miscarriage, about partners not knowing how to navigate that. It was something I was truthfully upset with because, you know, I was calling my husband, you're going to be a dad and this was so exciting. But then after we had the miscarriage, it was also a journey of like, now you don't care about me now that I'm not carrying a child, like there's no connection, there's no this. And it was because it was just a different way that he was grieving and processing. So having those conversations in your relationship when you're thinking of having children, to have those talks saying like, hey, if something is going to go wrong or is something, especially when you're going through the delivery stories, what happens if I do have a C-section versus natural that I thought, preparing yourselves the best that you can, not trying to say that you're going to have it all figured out. That's a once in a million chance, but that way you just know that you kind of have each other when things might be a little bit different. And talk about that, about money, talk about that if there's weight gain or mental health or a car accident or a loved one is passed on and you have to continue this life moving forward. That's a part of self-care as well.
Oh yeah, and it's open dialogue, and
Yeah.
you have to, and sometimes that open dialogue isn't comfortable, and
Oh.
you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And some of those conversations, you've got to pick the right time to have them.
Mhm.
Having a conversation about not feeling equal and grieving something like a miscarriage, and
Yeah.
doing that at 11 o'clock at night when you've both had awfully long days,
Yeah.
may not be the best time to get the best results. And so
Yeah.
it may be that you need to schedule a time to talk about it.
Yeah.
Or that's where you make sure that have some time that you're spending alone together for those conversations to happen. And
Mhm.
so that's all a part of self-care. And I think that's where the word self-care gets misconstrued, is
Mhm.
it gets put as this, I have to be in this perfect, unchaotic world to have self care. And it's really not. It's
No.
as simple as, do you need your space organized so that you can have a good day?
Yeah.
That's where it can start.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just wrap that again perfectly on just saying like, truthfully, it's when you're in the trenches is where self-care is actually your food rations. That's where you need that the most. So giving yourself that respect in that space. And this is something I work with couples all the time. They might not like the 40-page text message. Okay. So you just have to ask that person, do you respond well to long text messages? Do you respond better to a letter or a card? Or do you respond better to a voice memo? Or do you respond better to us not being in the same room to have this discussion and then we'll have an in person discussion? Or does it have to be holding hands in a very intimate moment saying, like, this is what I need to hear, see, and connect to you, right? Like, that is 1000% called communication.
It is, and it's important. And
Yeah.
I mean, for me and my husband, our texts are probably really short, but we didn't get to know each other that way. We got to know each other in person with
Hmm.
face-to-face conversation, and that's how we talk better. So
Yeah.
you just have to look at that sometimes, of what is your better communication, but but you have to also remember that texting, you remove like 97% of your communication cues between
Yeah.
body language, voice, what you sound like when you're saying something. So you have to also remember that when you're putting
Mhm.
things in writing, you may be losing some of the context because you don't have your voice or your behavior cues there with it.
Mhm, mhm. That is so true because they're like, "And how did you think I was gonna take that?" And then the husband's like, "I'm just checking in, how you doing?" And so it just yes, it's all about skewed, blinded context or views on that, and yeah, maybe how you guys had better conversations was going for a drive or going for a walk or, really setting the intention in the space like we both said, so thank you for that. That's been just so good. Well, my dear, this has been such a great experience to navigating what is that relationship and self-care and loss and journey. Is there anything else you would really love to bring forward to anything else as your last tidbit?
I just truly appreciate being a part of your conversation today.
Thank
And
you.
really, I send out a weekly email that has self care, motivation, lifestyle, and organization tips on it. And it either has to do with relationships, nutrition, finance, or another topic. So, like
Okay.
today, it went out on self care, actually.
Mm,
So,
amazing.
so you can join that and really get these tips every single week.
Yeah, so those that are viewing, they kinda see a little abbreviation, on the end of your title. Where can we find you? Where can we connect with you? What do you have going on? Books or things like that?
So you can find me at Stacked Intent, and I'm that on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. And then my website is stackedintent.com. And so you can find me all those places, things I've got going on. I've got some online courses that are available. I have a retreat that's happening in November. So the sign up is going on for that now, and it's going to be such a fun retreat. And then my email, my blog, and my podcast all go out weekly. And then the 4 letters on the last part of my name, it's a certification for family life education. So
There you go.
all my stuff comes with backed. I find it through research and give it to you in tips and tools.
Amazing. Love it so much. Thank you, Becca, and everybody who's listening and viewing. Thank you again for, really enriching your earbuds or your senses today on what we brought to you. And again, this won't be the last and least that we'll be connecting with Becca. And thank you again for all of your love and your journey and your heart for the stories today.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, take care.